Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Charlie D's podcast. We have a very special guest tonight, Dina Roberts from the United States of America. Good evening, Dina, or good afternoon where you are.
It's afternoon here. I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm not so bad, thank you. So, Dina, obviously you've got some very interesting stories to tell, going by what we were talking about.
Yeah, I have a few.
Where would you like to start?
I don't know. Maybe start right from the start, from how old I was when I had my first experience, and
yeah, let's go for that.
On from there. Okay.
Yeah.
I was I think four. I was about between 4 and 5 years old, and it was 3 days after my grandmother had died. And I was walking up the hall, and there was suddenly, she just apparated in front of me, and she was kind of just a misty white form, human form, and her arms were crossed, and that's how my grandma always liked to stand. It seemed like she always had her arms crossed, and she was looking down at me. And even at that age, I knew who it was. I knew what she was. I wasn't the least bit afraid. I just knew that was my grandma. And she just kind of stood there and looked at me for a minute and then walked through the wall. And I never told anybody until I was an adult, because there was something in me, even at that tender little age, that told me, don't say anything. They'll just think that you were dreaming or you're making things up. Nobody believes a little kid.
Yeah.
So, that was the first experience I can remember.
Is that in the house where you are now?
Pardon me?
Is that where you live now, in the same property, in the same house?
Oh, no. That was decades ago in a house in St. Louis, Missouri. And as far as I know, nobody else saw her. And I just kind of got a feeling that she was saying goodbye, and she feels good now. She was very, very sick when she passed away. So she just gave me a feeling of peacefulness and I love you, and it's all okay,
So was you alive when your grandmother passed away, or hadn't you been born yet?
Oh, yes, I was very much alive when my grandmother passed away. I remember being at her funeral and crying at her funeral and seeing her in the casket. It was my first experience with somebody dying, and it was everybody else crying, kind of, I found myself crying as well, because I'm an empath, and I didn't know it then, but I pick up on everybody's emotions. So they were crying, and I was just a little child, so not understanding death really, I was crying. But to me, she just looked like she was asleep. I was just 4. I was like 4 or 5. And then I guess my next experience is a really weird one. It's really, really strange. We're Army brats, and Mom didn't want to live on the Army base apartments. They're really funky. So instead, we moved in with a friend of hers in some little town close to the Army base, and it used to be a mercantile, a general mercantile. The front of it was, and then the house was built like in the back. And I can remember people talking about it being haunted. I don't remember seeing anything move or anything, but in my room, our room, my sister and I and my baby brother, our room was in the front window, the front of the store, and there was Halloween decorations hanging from the ceiling, like a Halloween witch and a Halloween guy, just Halloween decorations. And I can remember even then wondering why the heck Lana, who owned the home, was leaving those things up, because they were creepy. Well, decades later, it was just actually a few months ago, I said something to my mother and my sister about those stupid, creepy people hanging in the mercantile in our room. And they're like, no, Dina, there was nothing hanging in our room. So apparently I was seeing something nobody else was seeing, and I was very little. I just thought it was Halloween decorations.
Right.
No, I was seeing something totally different. And never found out until I was an adult. I thought, well, that's just really creepy. I went to bed every night with a ghost hanging above my head.
So, have you ever had any bad experiences?
Oh yes, yeah. I've had some really bad experiences. Really teaches you to be careful. Um, the first bad experience I had came when happened when I was just a little too big for my britches. Um, there was a lady that claimed to be, she was an ordained minister,
Right.
but she was not behaving such. She had, and I could see them because I have what's called the gift of discerning spirits, and I could see these dark entities all around her, sitting on her, just really oppressing her. And I'll call her Anna. Anna walked around with her head hanging down, wouldn't look anybody in the eye. And, I could see these things, and I don't always approach people when I see something, but she was pretty likable. And I came up to her and I told her what I was seeing. And at that time, I was a practicing Christian. And I asked her if I could pray for her and try to run those things off. And she was like, yes, please do. So that evening, I went into her room and I put my hands on her head and began praying and prayed really, really hard. And you could feel these things moving away. And I mean, there was a lot of them, and you could feel them moving off of her, moving away from her. And when I got done praying, she just lifted her head, and she looked like a whole new person, like just the weight of a million blocks had been lifted off her shoulders, and she smiled, and it was bright and beautiful, and she hugged me, and it was a wham wham moment. So I went home and went to bed, and I was sitting up in my bed praying, and I had my door open and felt this horrible feeling, cold rush, and the door slammed shut really hard. I mean, it shook the room, and I could feel this cold, negative, just really nasty, and it stunk. And I felt it like fly across my body, and then out a window it went. So that wasn't too bad. It made me, I started praying really a lot harder, and it wasn't too bad. But then a few nights later, I crawled into bed, and I'm laying there, and I think I had just got done praying because I try to make it a habit to pray every night. And all of a sudden, I closed my eyes, and all of a sudden there was this tremendous weight on my midsection, and I opened up my eyes, and there's this man sitting straddled on me, but he's sitting backwards. And I thought I recognized this person because he was an ex-boyfriend. And I thought he broke into the house and was about to do some really bad things. And just as I was getting ready to, yell his name or whatever, I don't know, it spun around in just super fast. Like, I mean, just amazingly fast. And it still looked like him, but his eyes were like the eyes of an angry snake or a cat. He had slits for pupils, and they were glowing red. And I never seen such hate, such hatefulness in my life. I never felt that kind of hate. And the smell was there with it, and it was just awful. And and this is all happening like in one swift movement. He grabs my throat with both hands and he leans down real close into my face. And I mean, his nose is practically touching mine. And excuse my French, but he said, "That bitch is mine." And then he was gone. And that was quite freaky. I think that something was a little angry that I had successfully removed some of those things, but I had not learned how to protect myself yet. And it happened a second time with another girl. Again, I could see just swarms of these things around her. And I felt like I knew her well enough to tell her. She knew me, and she knew, what I can do. And she told me she worshipped Satan. You can worship whoever you want to, but I told her as long as she kept worshiping something negative, her life was going to stay the hell that it was. And I said, "You used to be Christian, didn't you?" And she's like, "Yeah, I did." And I said, "Well, then I don't have to tell you a lot. You already know why your life is crap, because what you're doing." And I asked her if I could pray for her. And I really learned a hard lesson with this one. I asked her if I could pray for her. And she said, "Yeah, but you have to quit if I tell you to quit." And I said, "Okay." And I put my hands on her head and I started praying, and I only got a few words out. And it was like, I swear it was like something off a TV show or something. She threw her head back and started braying like a donkey was coming out of her mouth. And, that was too much for me. I pulled my hands away and I'm like, "Oh my God, you need to take your little demons and get out of here." And you need to find a preacher. You need to find a priest, because this is beyond me. I can't get rid of that. She was possessed. I mean, and I could get rid of the little dinky things that are hanging around you and oppressing you, but not when you're possessed. That's for somebody more powerful than me. I can do a little of this and I can do a little of that. So that night, my fiance at the time, he was blind, and we had just gone to bed. He was still sitting up in bed. The lights were still on. I just crawled in bed and covered up and felt like my chest was being crushed. And I opened my eyes, and there was this thing, and it was human, but it had like no hair, and its skin was this disgusting mottled blue, looked like it was getting ready to slough off his body. It was really, really gross. And it didn't say anything, but it got down in my face just like the other one did, where, our noses were barely touching, and it opened its mouth. You have to excuse my teeth, but it opened its mouth in this grimace smile, and it was full of teeth like needles. I mean, just crammed like a porcupine. It was just cram-packed with teeth like needles, and it chattered its teeth at me. And I just screamed out for, the Lord, the God, to protect me, help me, get this thing off me. And sat straight up in bed. And my boyfriend's like, "What's the matter with you?" And I said, I knew how he was. And I said, "Well, I just had a bad dream." And he said, "We haven't even been in bed long enough for you to fall asleep. Don't start that weird shit again." It's like, I really can't help it. What happens, happens. I'm sorry.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, that's
So the two people who you helped, had they had bad things happening to them, or were they just like down in the dumps, or did they see things?
The girl that was possessed, I think, was very well aware that she was possessed. Um, and I think it made her feel powerful, but it was ruining her. It was destroying her. Her life was crap. The other lady did really well for a while. She did really well for a while. And I told her, you have to mind your P's and Q's. You have to keep up with your prayers, and you can't do adultery and drink anymore. That doesn't help you. As soon as you start doing stuff like that, you leave yourself wide open for the bad stuff to come in, and they're going to whisper at you to do this and do that. And, maybe next time they're going to be stronger and you're going to find yourself possessed. So mind your peace.
Yeah. So these things that you see around them, were they human size, or were they just orbs, or what sort
very
of size
small, very small, almost no wings, but almost like little fairies, but not a definitive shape. It was like little humanoid shapes. Some of them were just balls, but they were always black and always kind of misty, and sometimes they will swirl around a person. Sometimes they just kind of sit on their shoulders. Just, it kind of varies, but they always look the same and always have the same intent,
Right.
Yeah, that's a couple of the scary things I had happen. One of my favorite scary things, I shouldn't say favorite, but it was really quite scary. We had so many, it's hard to pick and choose, but this one takes the cake. My boyfriend and I have taken an evening drive, and we were driving the back roads to get back to the little hometown that we lived in. It was a little tiny. If you blink, boop, you miss it. Well, this back road led to the old cemetery that was in that little town. And we got probably half a mile, and I got this feeling like I'd been punched in my gut, and this sense of dread, absolute horrible dread. And I looked over at him, at Mark, and I'm like, you need to really, really hurry and get us around this graveyard and out of it. And he's like, why? And I said, just trust me, we need to really hurry. So he sped up a little bit, but he had to slow down to come around this big curve, and boom, there's the cemetery. Well, it's like 11 o'clock at night, and I couldn't help it. I had to look. I wish I hadn't, but I had to look. And there was a figure in like tattered gray robes, like something you would see off a movie show. I'm not kidding. It was wearing a hood, but it was a rounded hood. It didn't come to like a point or anything, and it all looked real disheveled and ripped up, and it was gray, and it did not look at us. I'm sorry, what?
And this was in the cemetery?
Yes, it was in the cemetery, and we were driving along the cemetery. Well, that thing started running and was keeping up with the vehicle, and we were flying, and it was just like running through headstones, and it was keeping up with us, but it was like floating, and there was no feet running or anything. It was just speeding through these headstones. And I knew, and just intuitively, I couldn't take my eyes off it, but I knew that if it turned its head and looked at me or looked at Mark, that we were going to be in some real trouble. Something really bad was going to happen. And luckily, it didn't turn its head and look at us, but I had the sense of it being female and having had been human at one time. But now it was an evil. I don't know what it was, but it scared the crud right out of me. It scared me half to death. It was a horrible looking thing. And yeah, I just knew, I knew if it looked at me that there were going to be problems, but maybe it was still some kind of warning, because that really wasn't a very good time in my life.
Right.
So, it could be that it was some sort of message or warning. I don't know, but he saw it too. My
Right.
boyfriend saw it too. And he pushed the pedal to the metal and got us, out of there as quick as he could. And it followed us all the way to the gates of the graveyard, and just, it kept up, and we were doing like 30 miles an hour. It was just a narrow road. You couldn't go too fast. And yeah, it was really, really scary.
So when you see people, as in human life, like friends, family, and whatever, do you see things around every?
Yes. Yeah, I see if there's something negative around somebody, I see it or I feel it. I know it's there. Sometimes I'm comfortable enough with the person to approach them with it and ask if they, want to try to do something about it. And other times it's just like, I'm walking past somebody in the grocery store and it's like, ew, ew, yucky, ew, try to not walk too close to them.
Yeah.
I don't like crowded places because of that's part of it. I hate hospitals. Because I walk past rooms and I can't help it. It's like, that one's gonna live, that one's gonna die, this one's gonna live, that one's gonna die, and I'm usually right. That's the clincher. I'm usually right. I went with my sister one time to visit her aunt-in-law, and she was in ICU. I don't remember why, but she was expected to recover.
Right.
My sister wanted me to go with her to visit her real quick because we were out running around doing stuff. And when we left the room, I said, she doesn't have long. I said, she's going to be gone within 3 days. And Kelly was like, oh, no, the doctor said that she's going to be fine. And I said, no, she's not. She's going to die within 3 days. And she died the next morning.
So what sort of, is it a feeling that comes over you? Is it someone that tells you something? How do you sort of know?
It's, in part, it's a feeling, but I see this thing a lot of times. It's kind of like a black ball, but it has tentacles. I don't know how to describe it. It just has like long, stringy tentacle things that come off of it, and it pulsates. And I'll usually see it up like in a corner of the room or something. Like I saw it right before my dad died, and he was at home and pretty well bedridden by then. And he yelled at me, Dina, get in here and come clean up this mess off the wall. And I'm like, what mess on the wall? So I go in there, and there's that little death thing I see up there on his wall. And he says, clean that up. And I said, Dad, there's nothing there, because I didn't want to upset him and scare him, and he looked at me kind of cross, and then he looked back up at the wall and it was gone. And he's like, oh, okay, I guess I was just seeing things. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, you were just seeing things. And within 3 weeks, he was gone. Yeah. We lost him. So, and yeah, I've seen that thing many times, and I don't like going to hospitals because just to, I've had spirits actually come to me after they die screaming, what am I dead? What's going on? Help me. And hospitals are yucky. They're just yucky. Yeah. I don't like going in them.
I don't think anybody likes hospitals. So do you see any good orbs? when you look at someone, do you see good people around them as well as bad people?
Yes. Yes, there are some people that just literally emit a light, a glow. I can usually I can only do it with pictures, but I can see people's auras. Um, but some people are just so full of light and so full of love and being good people. They just literally glow. It's like they illuminate and produce their own light. It's really really nice to meet somebody like that. It makes me want to be near them. See bump up a little bit of that energy my way. Make me feel good too. So yeah, I see both. That's why it's a gift of discerning spirits, because I can tell the bad ones from the good ones, and sometimes it isn't anything more than a feeling, but usually, with those that are oppressed, I see, like I said, the little black fairy-sized things around them, but with people who are full of the love and light and goodness, I don't see like angels flying around them or anything like that. They emit their own light, and they just literally glow with it, and you feel like being near them. At least I do.
So what about do they come to you? Do they look for you? Do you talk to ghosts?
Oh yes, yes. It's like I have a big neon sign across my forehead that says, I can talk to dead people. I feel like that little boy from that movie. I see dead people, and I will have total strangers. So I call them walkthroughs, but total strangers have come to me, and there was a little old man down the street that died. And I didn't know him. I didn't know him from Adam. And he showed up in my mother's house. And, to keep a long story short, he basically wanted me to go to his wife and give her a message about a watch that was supposed to be an inheritance to a nephew because they didn't have any children. And the watch was lost, and he knew where it was. And and it's like I told him, I'm not doing it. I'm not gonna go knock on some lady's door and be like, "Hey, your dead husband's talking to me." That's kind of cuckoo. And he pestered me for about 2 weeks. He pestered me for about 2 weeks, wanting me to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So one thing I could never understand. I mean, unless I've seen it for myself, I believe it. So when someone is murdered or whatever, why don't they come back and tell the police via someone like yourself who done it or what happened?
Well, sometimes they do. But this is my personal belief. When somebody dies, whether it's from violence or natural causes, hopefully when you die, the first thing you're going to do is jet off to your place of peace, not be stuck here on earth. But there are those who, are really pissed off about being murdered, and they want justice, and they will do their dangest to, get somebody to hear, see, listen, and do something about their killer. And there are actually a few cases where a ghost really gave them all the clues and stuff that they needed to arrest somebody. And so it does happen. I think it just depends on that individual person. I think if I got murdered, I'd be quite happy to go right on to my peaceful place and not worry about it. But that's just me. Other people are going to be angry that they're dead and want justice.
So, other than you say when you was in bed with your boyfriend that the door slammed. Else that you've like physically seen move about, or anything else like that?
Yeah, definitely. We get things that not so much in this house, but things in this house tend to disappear. But I have any house I live in, it doesn't matter. After I'm in there for a little while, it ends up becoming active. I can remember living in one little trailer where you could watch stuff move. I mean, it just made no bones about the fact that it was there, and I was never afraid of it, but it was just kind of there and let me know. There, I lived in another apartment that was so bad. It was so bad. I ended up moving out. It was probably one of the most horrific experiences I've ever had, and I have never been driven out of my own home by a spirit. And this bad boy drove me right out of my house, and it was a poltergeist to top it off. So it was
So
kind of
what's the difference
with a poltergeist and just a ghost. Poltergeists, I believe, come from a very angry energy, and that can even be a live person can create that kind of energy as well, or at least help an entity get fed so that it can produce enough energy to fling things around. The first time with this thing that when I was checking the apartment out, I kind of could feel it, but I thought I could handle it. I would just say a lot of prayers and hang up some crosses, and it was going to be fine. Well, that wasn't true. I came home from work one night and looked up at my apartment, and my lights were on. And I thought, well, that's odd. Maybe I must have flicked the switch before I left or something. And my door was locked, and I went in there, and it looked like an absolute cyclone had been through. It was torn. It was torn up. I mean, it was just unbelievable. It was torn up. And my initial thought was, well, somehow the neighbor kids must have managed to get in or something, So I went ahead and called the police and made a report of it. And then it was maybe a week later, same thing. I pull up in my driveway and the lights are on, and I go in and my apartment is completely trashed. Reported it to the police again, but this time I knew, and just instinctively I knew no children had come in and done this. I could really feel this thing in my room at this point. I put a deadbolt lock on my door, and that didn't make any difference. And, there was just no way anybody was getting in there with a deadbolt lock on my door. And then I started. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you believe it was in there all the time, or following you in, or how was it getting in?
It was there all the time. It was there long before I moved in, and it affected the whole upstairs of this place. It was an old Victorian house that had been turned into apartments. It was fine downstairs. Never felt a thing downstairs. There was another ghost there that was really friendly. Her name was Chloe, and I had a lot of interaction with her, and I didn't mind, any interactions with her. But this other thing, like it showed up one night as a huge black ball, and it was undulating in the corner of my room. I could see it, and I just really wanted to run. And instead I said some prayers and put out some quartz stones and some other little tricks to try to keep it away from me. The final straw came. I slept with a cross under my bed, and I wore one, and it was a rather expensive little cross that I wore. So I'm asleep, and I get woke up to my name being screamed by a man. I mean, it sounded like a man. It was a male voice. And, I shot up out of that bed. What's somebody doing in my little apartment? And of course, there was nobody. And I had a terrible, terrible sense of dread. And I was like, boy, I'm just going to get ready for work and get the heck out of here. And so I took my necklace off, and I always laid my necklace in a nice circle. That way the chain, it was really fine. It wouldn't get tangled up or anything like that, And like I said, I slept with a cross under my bed. So I go and I get my shower, and when I come back out, my necklace is still laying in a nice, neat circle, but it's got 3 knots in it. I'm like, okay. Well, I go to start to make my bed, and I pick my pillow up, and the cross that's under my bed has been snapped in half.
Really?
Yeah. So I just hurried up, got ready for work, and blasted out of there as fast as I could, and had already made up my mind. I'm going to do one effort to cleanse this place, and I'm going to get out if it doesn't work. Well, at that point in time, I was still a practicing Christian. And I thought, well, the thing to do is, I'll do a Christian ritual, and I'm going to get this guy I knew from work who was a Wiccan. I'll get him in to come and do his thing. And then I had a third guy who claimed to be a necromancer. So I thought, all 3 powers like this thing's got to go. All it did was get mad. All it did was get mad. And as the Wiccan guy, he claimed to be a Wiccan priest. As he was leaving, all of a sudden, I noticed there's this thing sitting on his foot, riding his leg. I mean, it was like a little human. It had its arms wrapped around his leg, like you see a little monkey riding the mama, only it was his leg. And it was naked and just really had sparse hair on it, wiry, sparse hair. And it was this nasty pink color, and it had just slightly pointed ears. And I screamed at him. I screamed at David, what the hell is that on your foot? And he looked up at me real surprised, and he said, you see that? And I said, yes, I see that. What the hell did you bring into my house? And he said, well, it's a lower level demon. It's an imp, and I use evil to fight evil. And I said, and you can just go right on ahead and get on out of my house right now. And just leave. I could not believe he brought evil to fight evil, and the necromancer guy, that was just all kind of a joke. I don't know what he thought he was doing, but things were made 10 times. It was terrible. I had to move out, and I actually just moved downstairs where that thing never was. I got a bigger apartment and moved downstairs, and the only spirit ghost I had to deal with was Chloe, and I liked Chloe, so I didn't have a problem with her. But being downstairs, not one single time did I have a problem with that thing that was upstairs. I don't know, I kind of had a feeling that it might have been human at one time, but it had been evil and bad for so long that it became this thing that it was. There was no humanity left in it. And
So
yeah, it was really quite.
have you heard if is it still there, or don't you know?
I don't know. I don't know. I drive past the house, every now and again, and I don't like driving past the house at all. Always expect to see something looking out the window at me where I lived, in my apartment upstairs. Uh, I don't know. It was like the whole upstairs. Anybody who lived upstairs suffered from depression, and it was just nasty. It was really bad. I don't know what it was doing there. I know that house used to be a hospice back in the day when what was it, the flu epidemic. um,
Spanish flu?
no, not Yeah, the Spanish flu or something like that. It was a huge big deal. Millions of people died from it. But this was a hospice for influenza.
Yeah.
Influenza. And Chloe was actually a nurse there at that hospice. She caught it and died there. And she was like a protective. I always knew when she was getting ready to make an entrance, because I would smell lavender. And then something would happen, like the cabinet doors would open up, or it would open up and close. Never anything mean. If I had guests, if I had company, she liked to come and stand around and just listen. Sometimes they would freak out because they'd smell the lavender, and they'd be like, I smell lavender. And I'd be, oh, well, Chloe's on her way here then. They'd be like, well, it's time for me to go. They just didn't care to be around a ghost. But she really was a nice lady. And I could see her just like as clearly as I see you, very solid, very, and that's when I see spirits, that's generally how I see them.
Are you the only one in your family that's like this, or have you any siblings
No,
that can do the same thing?
my sister also can see spirits. She can kind of tell the future. I can't do that, but she can. For example, if you're driving in a car with her, and she suddenly says, "You need to watch out for deer." In very short order, here come a bunch of deer trying to cross the road. She just things like that. She's had dreams about bad things that happen, and like plane wreck or something like that. She'll dream about it, and then it happens. She does see dead people. She's gotten I don't have them, but she's captured a few real interesting pictures in her house. But we're different in our belief system. I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm I consider myself pagan, and I'm a witch. My sister's very considers herself very Christian. So in her view, her abilities are a gift from God, and mine come from the devil. So we don't, we don't talk about it a whole lot, but there's been a few times that we've tag teamed and really seen some things together, and yeah.
So how do you know when something is sort of approaching you, or what do you see? Do you get a feeling come over you, or is there
Yes,
a sign?
generally first I'll have a feeling. I'll get like a in my gut. Sometimes it feels really dreadful. Other times it's just there, and a lot of times I'll get a cold chill. I'll start feeling cold. My hair will stand up on end. I get goosebumps so big and so bad they hurt. And I know somebody's coming. Somebody's going to make an appearance, and they make their little appearance, and I can either communicate with them or I can't, and most of the time they just kind of walk through and go on about their business.
So is it the same feeling for good people and bad people?
No, no, it's definitely a different feeling for good people and bad people. If it's bad, that knot that I get is really very dreadful and icky, and it my skin will creep. It's not the same as just the goosebumps I get. I mean, I feel like my skin is moving off my body. It just creeps. Um, and I know I'm about to see something that isn't going to be very pleasant. But I don't know. I don't always have control of that. I mean, I can put a wall up. If it doesn't happen so fast, I don't have time for it. Um, Sometimes there's a little voice that tells me that don't block it, don't block it. Because I guess you seeing them is somehow going to help them. I don't know. Uh, so there's a lot of things I don't know. I just know what my guide tells me to do, and he helps protect me from the negative ones, because they can jump. They can go from one person to the next.
Right.
And I've had that happen. So I've really had to learn to protect myself. Just recently, I did a big cleansing and blessing in a home, and the whole family was like oppressed. And I had to wait for the children to be gone, and the husband, he gave his permission for me to do it as well, but my presence was making him really uncomfortable. He said I was making him sick. So he took the kids and he left for the day. And I fully expected that. As soon as I walked in the door and saw him, I knew that he wasn't going to be able to handle anything. And he was really, really super duper oppressed. The wife, I did a cleansing with her outside with sage, cleared her out as best I could, and brought her in, and did an energy pull, which is, I don't know anybody else who does this. This is something that one of my guides taught me and told me, and really does seem to help people. So I did this energy pull on her and cleared out, filled her with light and love and all that kind of stuff. And we went ahead and did the cleansing, and we had to do kind of like a horseshoe in our walk to cleanse. And I stood behind her, and she had the sage, because the homeowner should be the one, making the demands. And she was reciting the Lord's Prayer and telling it that it wasn't welcome to get out of her home. This is her home, da 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 da. And as we got to almost the end of doing this, all of a sudden she stops dead in her tracks. She's gagging on words. She can't say anything. And I could feel it. It was really panicking. It was about to be booted out, and it was really panicking and affecting her. And I just put my hands on her shoulders and started reciting the Lord's Prayer with her, and then she was able to spit it out and start talking. And we chased it out to the one open window, and then did some things with some salt and crystals in the four corners of the house. And I told her, you really, really need to do something with your husband. Now that I've taught you to do this energy pull, I want you to do that to him. And you can do it to yourself, but you really have to follow through. I can only come in and do so much. And if you don't do anything afterwards to make things better, it's going to come back, and it's going to come back really pissed off. So, you need to do your part too. And he really, really needs he needs cleanse. He's so heavily oppressed. It's sad. That's why he was so uncomfortable around me. He was in physical pain. It's because those things knew that I wanted to kick him out, and they didn't want to go. So they made him sick, so he had to leave.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm going to give it a day or two more and give her a call and see if she's done that yet. And hopefully she has, because, it's just going to keep coming back. She had two human spirits in there, as well as this really nasty negative thing. And I wasn't worried about the two human things. We said that anything that's from love and light is welcome, but the rest of y'all got to go.
Yeah.
You got to go.
So do you think that if you're good in the human world, that you're good in the spirit world, and the same with bad people?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So do you think that if you're good in the human world, as we are now, then in the afterlife, or as a spirit, you'll be a good spirit? Or if you're a bad person now?
I believe it's a choice. I think that most people who are good in life, of course, when they pass away, they're going to be good in death. They're going to go to their place of peace, hopefully, and not hang around and bug people. But people who have been, lived a very negative life, I think they have a choice, because I think it depends on why did they live such an evil life? Were they mentally ill? Because if they were mentally ill, they can't help it. So I think that they would have a choice of, you can finally go on to your peace, because all the things of the world are gone now. You have a choice. But there are those that were, evil and nasty in life, and they want to be evil and nasty and dead. It's a lot of power. Plus, they are afraid of where they might go. Instead of going to a place of peace, they might go to a place where they're getting punished. So they're afraid, afraid to have anything to do with the light, because the light might blink out on them.
So what do you, do people approach you to try and find out about their loved ones?
Yes, I've had that happen. I've had it happen without them approaching me, because the spirit is, around them and wants to be heard. And I've been like, hey, did you know that you've got a spirit around you? Oh yeah, I wondered. Most people can kind of feel it. So yeah, I've had people approach me, and I've approached people, but I only approach people if I feel that it's really important, that the spirit really needs to be heard for whatever reason. I don't like the idea of a spirit being at rest and somebody having a question and they want me to conjure it up from its place where it's resting. I don't really like to do that unless there's an urgent problem. But usually if there's an urgent problem, that spirit is going to be around them anyway. So all I really have to do is ask them if they want, do you want to step forward? Do you want to be heard? Do you have something to say? And that usually works. So I'll step forward, and occasionally I have channeled, which I don't like to do that. But usually I just talk to them, or I'll use one of my pendants to try to make a better connection. The problem with the pendants is I can pretty much only ask yes or no questions, so I have to form the questions that way. I did try to do some automatic writing, and actually did okay with that. I was really surprised because I hadn't tried it before. So I did some automatic writing with that house I just cleansed. And I used tarot cards for the first time. I'd never used tarot cards. And I used tarot cards, and that was quite interesting. I'd like to get a deck of my own. It was pretty cool. But
So,
yeah,
so,
I don't know. Go ahead.
so do you know? Do you just look at someone and people want to get through to them, or do you just ignore it? Do you try and get in touch with people for people?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I ignore it. Like I was explaining about, the old man wanted me to go give a message to his wife. His name was Kirby. I didn't know. I didn't know Kirby. So that's an example of a ghost stepping forward. Now I don't know if he went to his wife's house and bothered her as well, but he sure was bugging me. Uh, do what?
That young kid, David.
Oh, the young kid David. Yeah, for a while I had a ghost, and he was a guide of sorts. Yeah, that was David, and he was like, he looked to be like 14. He was young, so I must have been one of his first assignments or something. I know, but he was with me for a couple of years, and it seems like I got good enough. I didn't need him anymore, and he moved on or something. And then there was the apartment. I lived in an apartment, and it had the spirit of a man who had Down syndrome, and his name was also David. And his mother lived next door. It was a duplex. Actually, it was a fourplex. But his mother had been forced into a nursing home, and he had died like 10 years before. And I never felt him until they forced her into that nursing home, and then boom, all of a sudden there's David. Where's Mama? Where's Mama? And I would see him all the time, just stand there watching me cooking, or playing with the dog or whatever, and he'd be where's my mama? Where's my mama? And
Yeah.
he just felt so sad. He just felt so sad. And I would tell him that they took Mama. They took Mama. Just wait, and you'll see her. You'll see her. And I just kind of let him hang around and do his thing. He liked to make things disappear. He liked to scare my blind boyfriend. He really enjoyed that. He would stomp us the floor real loud so that Troy would hear him, and he'd be like, "Who else is in the house?" Well, honey, it's 3 a.m. There's nobody in the house. Just scare him to death. And he shoved my sister one time. My sister came in and was arguing with me, and he shoved her onto the bed, and she shut up. She quit arguing. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think David doesn't like you. He doesn't like you, so you better be nice while you're here. So he was a fun. I felt bad for him though, because his mom was pretty healthy. They forced her because she was losing her mental capacity.
Yeah,
I guess it kind of really upset me that they forced her. She was a nice lady, and she seemed to have everything together to me. But yeah, there was no haunting until she moved away, and then the people that moved into her apartment, the little girl was given his bedroom, and she refused to go in there. She refused to sleep in it. She slept on the couch. She wouldn't go in it during the day, and she was like a preteen. And it was because she could feel David around. And I tried to explain to her, he's not going to hurt you. If you're trying to get dressed and you feel like he's in there, just tell him to get out, and he will. Just be nice to him. If you're nice to him, he'll be nice.
I remember things from many, many years ago when I was a child. One thing my dad used to say was, if they've never hurt you in the living world, they'll never hurt you in as a ghost or whatever. But also, many, many years ago, I was only about 8, and I've got 2 elder sisters, and they decided to do a Ouija board. And my dad was like, no, yeah. My dad was, no, don't believe it, don't believe anything like that, etc. Anyway, a long story short, my dad sat out of it, and we supposedly got his father come through. And myself, my two sisters, or my mum knew my grandfather and my dad's dad. He already died before they was married. And my dad said, if it's true, ask what happened to him in 1927. And it spelled out exactly what happened to him. He fell down a hole in the dock and broke his ribs. Now, none of us knew that. None of us ever met him. He was dead before he met me. He was obviously born. So, I don't know, you know.
Well, I personally wouldn't touch a Ouija pole with a 10-foot pole in somebody else's hand.
Yeah.
I think it would just be a really overwhelming experience for me. I don't trust the spirits that come through on Ouija boards to be who they claim to be. I mean, you know, something bad can very easily know exactly everything and tell it to you so that you think that you're talking to that person who died or a good spirit. I think that there occasionally a Ouija board, but it good does come through, and you are speaking with the person that you want to. But even in doing so, that doorway is wide open, and who knows what's slithering through while you're talking to you know, the spirit that you think is your relative.
Yeah. Well,
you don't know what else.
Yeah. Nothing ever happened after it and whatever, so who knows? But that's just.
Did you close it properly? Did you close it properly?
I was only young. I don't know what they've done. You know, I
well,
was
if your sisters closed it properly, it, you know, chances are it's okay. But I don't like Ouija boards, letter boards, any of the like. It's, you know, opens up a doorway, and you know, there's lots of ways to open up doorways. These my pendants that I use, you know, they are in a way opening a doorway for that spirit to step through. But I'm very specific. You know, if I'm using a pendant, I'm very specific about who I want to step through and who I can talk to. And just because I am who I am, I know if it's a trickster or if I'm really speaking to the person that I want to speak to. You know, it's kind of a drag having to do yes and no questions. It's kind of slow. If there have been times if I'm, you know, 100% positive I am speaking with who I think I'm speaking with, I'll do a quick letter board so I can get their names faster, and you know how old they were, and you know, things like that. But it's pretty much like using a Ouija board, and if you don't close it, and if you don't watch your P's and Q's and make sure that nothing else is trying to come through, you know, it can just really cause a lot of problems for a house. And sometimes it's just temporary, and other times you let in something that's got a whammy, and you know, it really messes your house up and your living, and makes everybody unhappy, and just can be a bad thing. They're not worth the effort to use them. It's not, you know, if you want to talk to someone who's deceased, then you should sit on the edge of your bed and be really quiet and really focus on that person and see if you can get them to come to you, or come to somebody, you know, like me, who's not going to play games, and you know, never charged anybody a dime in my life. You know, come to somebody who's real, you know. But if that spirit is at rest, it's not fair. It's not fair to call them from their rest. So it's something, you know, it's kind of rare. I have to have, I prefer to feel like the spirit already around that person, and I'm not waking them up, so to speak.
Well, now obviously you know how to do this and whatever to get through to the studio. Would you be up for coming back the same time next week to talk about your pendants and how to use a pendulum?
Sure.
Yeah, because
I'd be happy to.
Just over the hour now, and you know it'll give you a chance to relax and whatever. So we're going to bring it to a close, but Dina, I've got to say it's been very, very fascinating, and I do thank you.
Thank you.
So, I mean, if anybody watching and they want to get hold of you, can they contact you through an email?
Um, they can, if they're having a severe problem, if it's a real problem. Yes, I'll do that. I prefer to be able to see them, face to face through Duo or something, but yeah.
If there is anybody watching who would like to contact her, my email's on there, charlie.d35@aol.com. Just contact me and I will pass your message on.
Okay.
If you are watching, if you could please like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, that would be great. And afterwards, Dina, when we're finished, if you can go on YouTube and just share it, that would be fantastic as well. Get the name out there.
Okay.
And if anybody you think you'd like to discuss or think it's an interesting story, please get in touch. We'll do a podcast with anyone.
I've got a book. I've got a book full of interesting stories.
Okay.
I really do. When my daughter was alive, she used to tell me all the time, "Mama, you need to write a book. Mama, you need to write a book."
Maybe you should.
So maybe I will one of these days. I don't know. There's so many. Every time somebody asks me to tell them a story, it's like I have a catalog in my brain, and it's like, hey, which one's not going to scare them so bad they never speak to me again? I mean, I've had people threaten to burn me at the stake and all kinds of stuff. It's just ridiculous.
Well, maybe we can go next week into you being a witch, and obviously your pendants and your pendulum. We can go into that.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm a what they call an eclectic witch. I don't have covens. I'm not one to cast spells. I think you can do that if you want to, but everything comes back on you. So, I think there's power in words. There's power in words, and there's power in how you use those words. You don't need a jar of honey with a pickle in it to talk to somebody or whatever. But yeah, okay. But yeah, I'll be happy to come back next week, and maybe I'll try to see if I can get set up somewhere better and show you how the pendulums work for me.
That would be great.
They pretty much spin whichever direction I want them to and stop when I tell them to. There are spirits in this house, so maybe I can get one of them to. I just got a really dirty look from Mom, but maybe I can get.
Don't worry, Mom.
Come through for just a minute if they're here. Yeah, I'll do it while you're napping, Mom. She's not very happy. But she's seen me in action. She knows. All right. But okay, yeah.
Dina, love you. Thank you very much. And what I'll do is I'll just drop you a line on Wednesday just to let you know everything's okay, and the same time next week.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, and we'll go from there. All right, lovely. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. You have a great day.
And you. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.